to the legends of the creative and entertainment industries. We talk to those on the rise. Lance Dean Anthony Nielsen asks about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This is Outcast Creative, and this is Industry Interviews.
Hello, welcome to my channel on a Saturday night, which is not my normal streaming time. However, industry interviews take place any time of the week because, as you know, they're the backbone of my channel. Today is another episode of Meet the Authors. I'm all about supporting independent creatives. I've had two authors come on here before. If you're a budding author, or you're someone who wants to write a book but hasn't yet, I think you will find this stream very, very interesting. Don't forget to do me a favor, though. If you're new to the channel, you're watching this for the first time, hit that subscribe button. Help me get to 10,000 subscribers. That's my goal for the summer. So, and let's hope the summer comes quickly, because I hate this cold weather. I am suffering a bit, which is why I'm off camera. So I'm going to be having two authors on here tonight, one of whom I think is running a little bit late, but I'm going to bring in my first guest. He's been on the channel before, on the Nielsen ratings a couple of times, and I think an episode of Chew the Fat, if I remember rightly. None other than Douglas A. Burton, not Douglas E. Burton. I don't know why I got that, how I got that into my head, but
it was a vowel.
Welcome back to the channel, Doug.
Well, thank you very much, Lance. I'm really excited to be here and talk with you today.
Yeah, and you've got two books out that we're going to get stuck into, and from a more established author to a man who's literally just written his first book, another collaborator, been on my channel many times, had a very, very, very interesting life, like myself. He's been a peace officer. He served in tours in the Middle East with the military, and seen the inside of a prison institution. What better background do you need to write a novel? I mean, there's got to be 5 books in those stories alone. Welcome, Lord of Toxicity, or Wes, as we like to call him. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I think 3 ought to do it for those topics.
Yeah. Well, now, if you guys didn't watch the last episode of Meet the Authors, when I bring on a writer, I always like to bring on 2 authors, because I think it's better, because the books are not niche. Books of course are very mainstream, but you don't see a lot of people talking about books on YouTube. Funnily enough, I have noticed this. Lots of film reviews, lots of TV reviews. There's not lots of streams promoting books. So I'm always happy to do my bit. But I think also what will prove interesting here, particularly Doug, slightly more experienced, Wes just starting out. It'll be interesting to hear the different approaches to writing, software you use, stuff like that. Because there are lots of people out there that want to write their first book, but just haven't made that plunge. I've now got 14 books on Amazon, but I have cheated slightly because only about 5 of those are novels. The rest are either screenplays, which I just adapted for publication, or plays of mine which had already been on the stage and which deserved to be published. So I got them out there. So that's how I was able to do quite a lot.
Lance, you have a recent book.
Whoa, look at that.
Lance, you have a recent book, Lance?
Yeah, I have. That's my book. It's also my avatar. Thank you very much. I know you both bought it in support. I'm very grateful. I have a stack of 6 books of other people's to read in my house currently. Slowly going through those. So it's very nice that you grabbed it. I hope you find it interesting and quite accessible. The feedback has been pretty amazing. It's seems to be provoking people's own memories that they've forgotten, attached to those films or other films, and I think that's great. You know, So hopefully it will be a slow burn, but it's still selling. So we'll see what happens. Just say hello to a few people in the chat. We got Rachel Piercy Art is back in. I'll try and whack your link up again later, Rachel. Bo Romeo is here from up north in the Midlands. Wormy Spoons, good to see you. Keith as well. Wouldn't be
What's up, Keithy?
Wouldn't be a stream without Keith on board.
That's right.
What before we get into writing and before we get into books, in general, I'm going to ask you my quick fire questions, which if you've seen one of the other interviews I've done, I ask everybody a quick set of quick fire questions. I always tailor them slightly towards the genre. So these ones are going to be a little bit more book related. However, the first question is always the same. What film do you remember seeing on the big screen when you were a kid? The first one that you can remember that you saw. Doug, to you first.
The first one that I saw technically was Star Wars: A New Hope. I was only 18 months old though, but my dad took me to the theater. But the first film that I remember is The Empire Strikes Back. You
would have been a bit older when that came out.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's, I was only 4, but I have memories of it. I remember parking. I remember going in there, and I'll never forget the AT-ATs that blew me away. And and Lance, similar to some of the things in your book, it was the first time my dad took us, and his college roommate came with us, and his college roommate became a movie reviewer to this from back then all the way to this day. And it was the first time I had heard 2 adults discussing the merits of a film like you might imagine intellectuals discussing literature. And it really struck me. I was like, man, this is like those are just those were like, it's a make-believe movie, but
Dad's getting really serious about it.
Yeah, man, they're all serious about it. So it's really stuck with me. And looking back today, I think it was rather formative.
Okay, well, let me just remind my guests, this is the quick fire questions. So keep your answers as short as possible. Otherwise, this section can last half an hour if your name's David McGiffert. But Wes, what about you? First movie on the big screen, can you remember?
Yep, Ghostbusters, 1984.
Mate, that's a great one. That's excellent. Was everyone singing the song in the cinema?
I don't recall it being like that. I remember my babysitter took me, and she really wanted to see Gremlins, and I kind of whinged a little bit until she gave it up and took me to Ghostbusters instead. And she told me afterwards, she was like, I think this was the better call. This was really a fun movie.
Yeah, I remember that, including in the UK, although we got the films after you, they both opened in the same week.
Yes.
And I mean, they both did well, but Ghostbusters did do much better. And I actually remember I saw Ghostbusters, I saw Gremlins the next day in the afternoon, and remember thinking, yeah, this is good. It wasn't as good as Ghostbusters though. And then I was back to see Ghostbusters again the next day. So what was, Doug, the last film that you paid to see on the big screen?
Nosferatu.
Wes?
Unfortunately, it was The Wolfman, but it was for a review, so I disavow. So.
Is that the sort of actiony one with guys with guns and stuff that I saw?
No. That was actually moderately entertaining. That one.
Yeah, I thought that looked pretty good.
That's Werewolves with Frank Grillo.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. So Wolfman. Okay.
Yeah, Wolfman, the updated version of Wolfman. Blue Collar asked me to do it.
Okay, no problem. You can blame him later. Doug, your starter for 10. Do you have a television drama series since the year 2000? So not The Sopranos, because that came out in the 1990s. That you have binged from beginning to end, and you went, wow, yeah, that was good. That was good writing. That was gripping TV. That was something.
Yeah, it's actually hard to binge them all these days, but Arcane was probably the last one that I heard so many things about. I clicked play and I just tore through season 1 of Arcane, and I loved it.
What about pre-streaming?
Pre-streaming? God, I went through a bunch of them. Lost was one of the first big ones. I also was a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Oh,
but I
two shows that ultimately had horrendously disappointing endings there.
My God, yes.
I mean,
both of them.
Both of them, yeah. All that time invested. Tox, what about you? TV drama show?
Justified.
Justified, one of your best?
Yeah.
Justified over The Shield?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Oh, interesting. Incidentally, Wes, there's a new police procedural on Amazon about two cops, and a lot of the footage is through their cameras, their body cameras.
The Call?
I think it's called Call Out or something like that.
Is it The Call or
The Call? Yeah, that'd be it. Yeah, cop gets killed in the first episode, and they're trying to track down. It's quite good. I mean,
Okay. I will give it a look.
We'll talk about it on the Nielsen ratings on Tuesday if you have a look at it. Yeah. So, Doug, what was the first novel that you can remember reading?
The first novel I read, I actually think was The Hobbit, but it was read kind of group reading. We would all read different chapters with my mother and my sister. The first book that I read by myself, oddly, was Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, the movie novelization. It's weird.
Probably better than the film. Tox, what about you? First book you read?
Rules of Prey by John Sanford.
Interesting. Douglas, do you remember the last novel that you read?
The last novel I read...
It could be Silver Screen Journeys because you're reading it now.
Well, I did. I read Silver Screen Journeys. Bride of the Tornado by James Kennedy.
Bride of the Tornado. That sounds like an interesting one. Tox, what about for you? Last book you read?
I just finished Bad Luck and Trouble by Lee Child for a review.
Oh, yeah, Lee Child. Okay. Is that a Jack Reacher novel?
It is.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Who would you say, this is your final question for the quick fire, who would you say is a writer of novels that you either look up to, must purchase the books of, or could be the person that inspired you to think, okay, I need to write a book?
Arthur Golden was the one that made me want to write a book, like after I finished Memoirs of a Geisha.
Right.
So I'll keep it brief.
Okay. Yeah. Tox.
Dennis Lehane.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. Good choices. Okay. Well, don't worry. For your longer questions, when we get into your careers, I do have my 5-minute sand timer here. So I'll be using it as and when needed to make sure you both get equal time. Okay. I've got it on the desk now. So, okay. All right. Well, that's done. Just to give us a sense of your cultural upbringing in terms of the things that influence you as a creative, the books, the films, and so on. And
awesome.
Yeah. So, Doug, let's start with you. I know you've got 2 books out. I'll talk about you guys' individual books in a bit, but let's go back a bit further first. When did you sort of sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a novel? And what was the deciding factor, or what was the thing that lit you to do that?
Well, like a lot of writers, you have a lot of false starts. You write several chapters, you're really proud of them, you show them off to your friends, you get satisfied, and then you abandon them. And then you've got stacks of these over the years. It was in 2015 that I decided that I had finished Memoirs of a Geisha, and I'm a Byzantine enthusiast because I love history. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a book that takes place in the Byzantine Empire. Ask yourself, how many movies can you think of that have the Byzantine Empire as a setting? It's like blacked out of pop culture. There's hardly any TV shows.
Where did Kingdom of Heaven fall, before or after that time?
It's kind of in that time, but it really focuses more on the Western European Crusaders.
Sure. But
it's
that era. It's that look, isn't it?
Yes, it is that time.
Right.
It's that aesthetic. It's a Roman Empire that's divorced from Europe. you know, it's the Eastern Empire, it's the Middle East and Egypt and Greece and modern day Turkey. And there's so few stories that take place in this era. And I was like, somebody needs to write a great book about the Byzantine Empire. I'm like, I'm just going to write a book. So I sat down and I was committed to this task. And I decided I was going to write Faraway Bird, focused on Byzantine Empress Theodora.
Okay, yeah. So the spark was kind of history, lack of books available in the period.
Yes.
And when was this that you first started? Not completed, but started.
Started in 2015. I actually started it and I stopped because I had my wife had the baby, but my younger son was born in 2015 and everything came to a halt. And then I submitted to some contest, and a writing agent said, "Sir, you need to finish this. If you finish this book, I will rep you." So I was like, I'm finishing this book. So that's what drove me to the finish line. And what's funny is she retired by the time I finished. So I was out of luck, but I had a completed book.
No, I think, you know, we'll get on to the actual book in a bit, but okay. So that was your start, 2015.
Yes.
Okay. And we'll come on to writing process and software next. Going to you, Wes, you're a more recent, you're a baby author in a sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I called myself that when I wrote my first book in my first year. I said I'm a baby to the writing of books. So you've just written Slapdash. When did you decide to sit down and write? What was the starting point? What was the fire?
Well, I always wanted to write. I used to do short stories. I was in creative writing classes as a kid. I wanted to kind of emulate some of the writers that I had read. I had like a box of manuscripts, little short stories and things that I wanted to do when I was a 18, 19-year-old kid. And unfortunately came home from work one day and found that my father and his friends were sitting around laughing at it. And so I got upset, and he and I promptly got into a pretty wicked fist fight. And it ended with him burning all my manuscripts later.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Man, how old were you when that happened?
19. I was 19.
Oh, that must have been so traumatic, man.
Yeah. So later, I would do it in secret, kind of ashamed, worried that someone would, you know, kind of do the same thing. I joined the army. Would go off by myself and, you know, kind of just write stuff in little notebooks and kind of tuck them away. This time went under a lock and key. Not that I was worried about my dad, but just that somebody would find them and laugh at me and, you know, say they were no good or say that, you know, this was weird or something like this. So ultimately went off to Iraq for a few years, came home and got into some trouble. And that's when I, you know, kind of went into a depression, and a Vietnam vet was the creative writing teacher at the prison that I was at. And he came and pulled me out and he said, "Listen, you're so creative. I want you to come in my class and I want you to use some of these energies and write your story." And you know, and I was like, "I can't write my story. I'm under indictment. If I write my story, the feds will use it against me." He said, "Well, make it fiction." And I said, "Okay." And that's when I wrote Slapdash, or at least the concept for it.
So the you started writing the threads for it whilst you were incarcerated, basically.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And what year was that?
Started in 2013.
Okay.
And then got really serious about it in 2017.
Okay. All right. And it when did you start chapter 1, so to speak, the first
2017 September.
So and you finished that in 2024. So that took you 7 years.
Well, no, unfortunately I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I finished it within 6 months and managed to move it from place to place, polishing it and messing with it. When I got out of prison in 2020, the pandemic had hit. I worked on it a little bit more, and then it just sat, and I was scared to do anything with it. I was like, this is very personal to me, and I just kind of got cold feet, and I let a couple people look at it who had said, hey, I think this is really good. And, you get that writer's anxiety, is this really any good? Am I fooling myself? And then,
well, after what happened with your dad, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised, man.
Yeah.
I think
That's crazy.
yeah.
And just last year, actually, 2024, I guess that would be right. 2024, I actually pulled the trigger on it. I had our mutual friend, Northern English Bastard. I send it to him via zip file, and he said, "Look, man, let's make this thing happen. You need to do something with this." So I did.
Oh, that's great that he encouraged you in that context. All right, let's move on to a couple of practicalities. So, anyone who wants to write a book, assuming they don't have an army of agents and assistants to complete the next process, needs to have a computer. Let's be honest. I mean, you can go on holiday and write scenes in your notepad. You can sit on the tube and write dialogue in the tube, which I used to do for my plays all the time. You wouldn't believe how many scenes I wrote on the tube, or the subway, as you guys call it. But sooner or later, you've got to do a first draft, which is going to need to be in some sort of digital format. And you're either going to be writing on a Mac or a PC. And when I decided to become an author, I was very serious about it. I was like, I'm either doing this and I'm doing it properly, or I'm not doing it at all. And having I had a couple of friends who were successful authors, and I bent their ear, and they all said to me, you're better off doing it on a Mac, because you can get this software called Vellum, and it formats everything for you, and it makes your life so much easier. And I thought, that sounds good. Let's get a Mac. So this is Vellum software, and this is the Vellum Silver Screen Journeys file. So if you look at the menus on the left, you can see that these are the 11 chapters of the book. I don't know why I did 11. I probably should have done 12. Keep it even. And when I first got Vellum, you couldn't put photographs in it, but you can. It's literally just as simple as drag and drop, effectively. And I mean, the good thing about Vellum is this is your worktop essentially in the middle here, and on the right, this is what it looks like on the right. And you can look at what it's going to look like in print or in Kindle. You can see what it's going to look like on an iPhone. So you have options of changing the way you're viewing it. But the important thing is you can see the final product on the right, including where the photographs fall and so on. So I have to say, for me, this was not only a godsend, but a motivational godsend, because my PC was very old, and I would have been writing on Microsoft Word, which of course a lot of people do. But I felt I wanted to have more artistic control over the final polish, and Vellum seemed to be the way to go. So that's what I use. For the benefit of anyone watching, if you've got a Mac, I can't recommend it more highly enough. And it's one price and you're done. It's not one of these things you have to subscribe to every month, which is always a con. It's a piece of software, old school, that you buy one time and that's it. You don't need to update it, blah, blah, blah. So it's for writing a book. That's what it's for. So Doug, going to you first, what do you use?
So I used to use something called Final Draft. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that.
Yeah.
For a similar reason, at least one part of your reason, which is to help with structure.
Yeah.
Any writer knows who's tried to get beyond the first couple chapters will eventually run into that terrible wall called structure, how do I end it? There's a lot of issues there. What is a character arc? When does the character start changing? There's a lot that goes into it. And for me, I spent probably 20 years studying story structure, mostly focused on the hero's journey and general 3-act structure. And I would study films, mainly films, but also novels. So what I did was I wrote each chapter based on a general understanding of a hero's journey story. That was the original plan. Lance, as you know, I ended up deviating from that plan and came up with the Heroine's Labyrinth later. But the original plan was to follow the hero's journey. So I did that. I would write each chapter on a Word document, and then I would update an Excel spreadsheet. That would let me know how many word, my total word count. Let me know if I'm getting too long. If a chapter goes over 5,000 words, you're probably running long at that point. But if there's no rules, but it's a good little red flag that's popping up there. And keeping track, I should probably be getting into part 2 right about now. I should probably be getting into part 3. I did all that. I put the book together. It had some sensitive stuff in it. It's not just, it's got some intense things. She was a prostitute. She's a real person. She had real biographical details. And so there's definitely some X-rated stuff in there, and there's some sensitive stuff in there. So I was very nervous about publishing the book. I think Lord of Toxicity mentioned you kind of balk. You're like, well, I wrote all this. Am I really going to put it all out there? And, anyone could read this. Anyone could comment. So I had, several people read and chime in. What I ended up doing was I hired a company called Monkey See Media. They're out of San Diego, California. And they helped me with the professional side of putting the book together, the book cover design, the interior design, the dimensions, the pricing, the ISBN numbers, like all the little things that become a part of this. So I did hire someone to help me and put it all together. It was very important in my head to have it look as professional as possible.
Funnily enough, I met that company at the London Book Fair.
Really?
In 2017. They were definitely there. I remember them because there's a massive section of the book fair dedicated to self-publishers. And if I remember rightly, quite a dashing guy in a suit, one of the key people.
Okay.
Sort of almost kind of looked like you could have, he would have fitted very well in Wall Street, but quite a handsome, fast-talking guy. And then there was an older guy, and there was a lady. So it's like the three of them, from what I remember.
Oh, okay.
And I might be getting them mixed up, but does that sound familiar? Does that team combination sound familiar?
Totally possible. If so, then I worked mainly with the woman. Her name is Jennifer Thompson, and
that rings a bell. That rings a bell as well.
Okay, yeah. She was the one that gave me all the advice and really reined in the more outlandish ideas that I had, and help me, because there's the creative side. Right? There's the creative side of preparing this and making it a functional thing. But then there's the practical side, and that's the less fun side because there's so much nuance, right? So, and you can get bogged down in this stuff. So she was able to help me kind of navigate that minefield.
Sure. All right. Well, we'll come back to the doing the story and stuff in a sec.
Sure.
So Tox, what about you? You're writing the book. Well, I think you said 2017 was when you started it properly. Was this Word docs or what were you doing?
No, it was a notebook. I had to basically
Sanskrit.
I had to everybody in. So when you're in the joint, you either have people that send you money, or you can work a job, or you can hustle. And hustle could be anything between creating art or selling food out of the canteen or something like that. Or for me, with my experience with law enforcement and the fact that I have a degree and I can read and write fairly well, my hustle was to do people's legal work for them. Not necessarily a jailhouse lawyer, but if someone wanted to write a request to a judge or a request to a lawyer, or
basic stuff that you
So that was how I made my money, and in return I would get paper, pens, and things of that nature in order to make that stuff happen. And then I would use what I needed for my hustle, and then the rest of it would be me writing. And basically the moves from one facility to another be very stressful because technically you can only bring legal work. I managed to talk to the guards and the powers that be and be like, hey, this is something important. It's yada yada yada, whatever I had to say to be able to move it from place to place. And luckily, just by the grace of God, got it out in 2020. and I started to painstakingly type it, but I found that I have the same ailment that Stephen King does, whereas when I open up my work, I keep tinkering with it and adding and doing all this shenanigans to it. So I finally gave up, gave the handwritten manuscript to a college kid here in Kansas and said, listen, I'll pay you to type this out for me, because if I type it, I'm going to keep messing with it. So
Right. Yeah. So you got him to
her,
type
it was
it
a
up
her.
and-
Yeah, it was a
oh,
her.
yeah, her. Sorry. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, and sort of how long did that take for you to get it back in your hands, so to speak?
I think she got it done in about 3 weeks. I think 3
Right.
weeks.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, she did okay. She didn't then I handed that zip file over, like I said, to Northern English Bastard, who cleaned it up a little bit more for me, free of charge.
Sure.
So, you know, just as a friend. And yeah, that's how I have what I have.
Okay. Yeah, and that your book Slapdash, I think it just dropped just a few weeks ago.
I think right after Thanksgiving.
Right. Okay. So let us talk about preparation and writing in general. So for me, whether I'm writing a script or I'm writing a novel, I will do what I call a story outline, or I will there's a couple of different techniques I use. One is I just get going and write a kind of very detailed synopsis of the story from start to finish, if it's that clear in my head, if I'm that confident with it. But it might be that what's clear in my head is scenes and characters, but not necessarily the whole story structure. And bear with me, I'm just grabbing something in my office. And so one of the things I've commonly done, especially for scripts, especially if it's somebody else's project they brought to me and they've got, you know, hey, I want to do a story about this and it's this guy and this happens. And that, so it's not my original idea, but I'm adding to that idea, of course. So what I'll do is I'll put my camera on for a second here, and I'll end up with a board like this. Well, let's just go a little bit bigger here. Oh, for God's sake, what's going on with my mouse? Right, here we go. So this is every one of these scenes, every one of these postcards is a scene. And the heading is basically, you know, the title of the scene. So I know immediately when I'm looking at the card, I know exactly which scene it is. And then on every card, there are 4 things, or what I call the four W's. So who's in the scene? So which characters? I'll just write quickly which characters are in the scene. And if it's an introduction to a new character, I'll probably put that bit of information. What happens in the scene? Why does it happen? And where does it take place? Right? Now, if I don't know the answer to those 4 questions, that scene probably doesn't need to be in the story. So that's a good way of also eliminating waffle. Not that I have a tendency to do that, but for less experienced writers in particular, I think it's quite helpful. And what's great about these is if you do, you know, what's called the postcard technique or whatever you want to call it, you can put all these out on the floor. Or you can even do it on a massive writing whiteboard, whatever works for you. And you can move them around, and you can like here I've clipped like 4 together because this is all one part of one segment, and gradually work them in order. And the reason that these are different colors as well is the stuff that's in blue takes place in Europe, and the stuff that takes place in America are the yellow cards. And the other thing that I'll do, and I teach this on my creative writing course because I've been teaching screenwriting for donkey's years, is this is a great way of kind of, because you're getting off the computer, I can't emphasize this enough, because you're being physical and you're the actual act of writing on the cards and moving and putting them on a board or moving them around on the floor to see what order they fit in, that gets your brain working. It gets your brain working in a different way than if you're just sitting in front of a screen. So the actual physical act of doing something is really quite important to this process. Eventually, you've got an order. And then what you do from that is you then write what's called in film business a treatment or a detailed treatment or a detailed synopsis. People can't make up their mind what word they want to use these days. It's one or the other. And it's probably going to be somewhere between 4 and 10 pages. And the first one that you're writing is purely for you. So you're writing as much detail as you can, because the more of this prep that you do, when you get on the computer to then write your book or your screenplay, you've done so much prep here. And you've already done your treatment, your detailed treatment. And then you go back to this and you change some things. You might write bits of dialogue on some of these. So gradually these cards get rammed full of information. But by the time you're ready to do the first draft, you've done so much prep that you'll find that you'll write your novel or your script basically as fast as you can type. So that's one of the things that I teach, and I find it very useful. I don't do that kind of prep all the time, and it does depend on the project, the type of project, whether it's a book or a film. With if it's a film I'm writing, I just need a list of scenes, and I'll go to that technique if I get stuck. But I was taught that by a screenwriter called Nigel Williams at a talk that he gave sometime in the 90s, I can't remember when, at this film festival. And I went along and he said, you're going to hear a lot of different ways about what's the best approach to writing a screenplay. Mine is going to cost you £1.99 from the post office, where you're going to go and buy a stack of blank postcards. And I thought, this guy's off his nut. But once he explained it, made perfect sense. I went back home and I used it literally the next day. And I was like, wow, this is actually really helpful. So that's some of the kind of prep that I might do. So Doug, obviously your first novel had some it's a historical thing. It's a real person. So obviously there's the historical research element, which you would have done. But in terms of, it's still historical fiction because you can't fill in all the blanks. So what did you do to do your story outline? Talk us through that.
So the story outline started for me with a little bit of world building. So for example, I try to set up, I have an entire system that I set up using Excel spreadsheets where I try to ask a question. So yeah, there's Faraway Bird. That's Empress Theodora there in the middle, overlooking Constantinople in the 6th century. And so you want to try to bring it in because, you can go anywhere. You could do anything. So you got to try to figure out which lane you're going to drive in and stay there. So what I'll do is I asked myself, what is one of the main issues that we're going to be dealing with? And my answer to that was carnality. She goes into prostitution. And it's not something she chose to do so much as something that was foisted upon her. She was impoverished, but this woman goes on to become an empress. And most the history books are kind of fascinated with the prostitution side because she wasn't just a prostitute. She actually developed some like fame or infamy, I guess you could say, in the city. So she was kind of known. She entertained some big guns back then. And that's probably how she made her connections, I would imagine. And there's stories that are told about her that are, once you hear them, you can't unhear them.
Right.
And so
this is begging to have a TV series made about it. I'm just saying.
Oh my God.
Begging for it, literally.
Yes. So she was very intrigued. The problem was she does all these amazing things as an empress. You would actually consider them women's rights by today's standards, changes to the legal code that were with laws written for the betterment of women. And in the 6th century, there was like no such protections back then. So she's really way ahead of her time. The problem was, how do you reconcile her past with this like over the top stories, lewd stories about her with what she does as an empress? So this book was meant to get into her character and understand what she was doing. So I focused on that side of her. So what that does in terms of the organization was I asked myself, what are all the settings where this issue, carnality, would take place? And I made a list. A brothel, the amphitheater, but a rich guy's house, and an estate. So I made a list of all of these things where these, and those became my settings. It became very convenient and useful for me as a writer to have settings kind of focused in on the theme that I wanted to set up. So that was a big thing for me. And that helps me with my world building, because now you get to pick some intriguing settings for your character, and these settings should feed into the story that you're telling. So that was one of the structural things I did to focus myself on her history that I thought that people would be interested in.
In terms of like the history, when you were researching her, and I imagine you probably read more than one book, because I'm sure that she gets mentioned in more than one. Did you? Because if I was writing her story, let's say I was doing a screenplay of this woman, the first thing I would do is, after obviously using Michael Googley, grab a couple of books, whichever the best ones are recommended, and I would make a potential scenes list of these are the dramatic milestone moments of her life.
Yes.
First time she worked in a brothel, first time she had attended an event with nobility or whatever, and so on and so on. First act as an empress, and so on and so on. Did you kind of do that kind of list as well?
Yes, Lance. And I want to say too, I almost forgot, I totally endorse Lance's index card system.
It's very helpful.
Yes, there's something about the physicality, holding something and moving it around, that just complements the mind. I don't know what it is, but it works. So I do some of that as well. I have the index card system similar to Lance, but then I think my next step for me is I have to transfer it onto an Excel spreadsheet, something I could take with me and toggle around.
Right.
So I did make a list of her biographical details that were important. And then, it doesn't get that hard. You start matching them up to that list of settings that I was looking at.
Yeah.
And then, these scenes start, like you said, they start to auto-populate in your head. You have to do your homework. You have to do your research. And funny enough, the more research you do, you'll find details in there that you cannot imagine on your own. And those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know. I've found that with any historical drama I've written, and I've written loads. Toxic. So, Tox, you got out of as we say in the UK, Her Majesty's pleasure, or his Majesty's, Majesty's pleasure. Now, because we've got a king now, with presumably a shitload of notes. Or did you get to go on a computer to write any of this when you were detained?
No, they don't let you really do that. I mean, there's some ways in some of the Fed prisons where you could possibly do that, but mostly no, they don't. They don't really allow that. So it was basically just handwritten manuscript. Yeah.
So once you'd got all of that, and I know you got somebody to type it up for you, but did you kind of sit down and do any restructuring, or was it already there?
Well, in so much as the process, because I had access to so much, writing materials, I would keep 3 notebooks. So one would be the writing of the actual story. I'd keep one as a kind of guide, just writing down, characters, plot synopsises, outlines, backgrounds to characters, yada, yada, yada. And then the third and the more important one is I would have one just for dialogue. I would just have dialogue, things were said to me, things I've used in common conversation, and then maybe something that I just worked up myself, and then I kind of assign that to whichever character meets that certain situation. And sure. And so especially with Slapdash, like it was kind of like a defining. I had the concept in my mind, but I saw that there was this big kind of I would say, feud going on between two big criminal elements in Kansas City, where, you know, I mostly live, and it's not where I'm from, but it's mostly where I live. And there was this operation that the Kansas City police were working on that they nicknamed Surge. And I thought that was really cool. And that might be, so I just kind of worked my story around that. And then, you know, kind of developed this cast of characters based on people that I knew in the military, people I knew in prison, people I met in law enforcement, and kind of just molded those characters around the, you know, how I perceive those events would take place. So it just went off those 3 notebooks. Like, one would be to write down the actual story, the book, the novel, and then the other 2 would be, you know, one for just specifically for dialogue stuff, and place that kind of like a puzzle piece, just put it where I think it would work. So I'm definitely a plotter more than a pantser, so to speak, to you know, use that.
Yeah, I mean, I could have phrased that question, you know, you're a plotter or a, you know, fly by the seat of your pants thing. I think most writers are probably a combination of both.
Agreed.
And I think it's good to plot, but you don't want to stay too rigid, because if you come up with an idea that feels amazing, it probably is, as long as it doesn't box you in. So you know, will lead to more plot holes than Swiss cheese. But okay, so I mean, it's funny actually, in a way, both of your novels, I would argue, are historical fiction in a sense, because Wes, yours is, I think it's safe to say, largely drawn on life experiences and put into story form.
That's fair.
Yeah, and Doug's, yours is drawn on somebody else's life experiences and put into story form. So it's not too far. So, sorry, go ahead.
A quick question for Wes. Is it a modern day story? Like, it takes place in modern day KC?
More modern than not. I do an overlapping story where the beginning of it is our main protagonist as he's a child and he suffers a really bad tragedy where he's from in Florida. And then I have that going in chronological order, jumping through different times in that character's life. And then the main story takes place in 2017. So we get to like see him simultaneously. I do these little interludes where we see the protagonist's life from like 12 years old, and then it catches up with itself near the end. And all of the little interludes are kind of watershed moments in the protagonist's life, which so that explains why you see this broken down alcoholic vet who's really got his feet planted firmly on each side of the law and, you know, outlaw. And we kind of see how he got to that point. I like, you know, the juxtaposition between the two, you know, main things.
No, so you've got 2 timelines. One is kind of working from the beginning of point A, present narrative, to end of story. And then your second timeline is stuff in the past that also gradually moves forward and reviews things.
That would be right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's
tricky.
It's tricky, but it can be really effective. I think it all depends on how it's done and the writing style. Do either of you, Doug, if you want to answer this first, do either of you kind of use headings at all? I'm not talking about chapter headings per se, but for example, if we take Tom Clancy's Hunt for Red October, fantastic novel, one of the first kind of modern warfare. Yeah, one of the first modern warfare novels I ever read. You know, it does, like in any given chapter, you'll be kind of like USS Dallas, you know, and then it'll give you the nautical and longitude or whatever, and you know, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest or whatever, and then, you know, and then it will jump to, you know, Red October, blah 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 blah. Do you ever use that sort of technique to quickly tell the author where we are?
Yes, but not on every chapter. So when we start, I'll say, Constantinople, Byzantine Empire, 523 AD, or in the year of our Lord, 523. So I'll give you that setting, and then several chapters take place there. But if I start to move the location, or if there's a time jump, I'll give you an update. We're in Suzusa, North Africa. 3 years later. Whatever. So I will do that, but it's usually to help cue the read. I try to keep it brief. Usually if there's a location jump or a time jump.
Yeah, fair enough. Wes, what about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely do. It's really important. I do two things. One, I give it the date and the time of when the events are happening, but I also do another thing, which is I like to name the chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
yeah, instance, some people do that, which is fine.
Yeah, I don't like to give them like generic names. I like to have it like the title itself, like slapdash, has a special meaning not only to me, but it's not a word in common vernacular that most people are using. Yeah, so if I don't know how well you can see this.
Hang on, I'll make you bigger. Hold on a second. We'll okay. Yeah, pull it back a little bit. There we go. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, and you've got like a quote in italics sort of thing.
So the reason I do that, each word has a specific meaning, and if you understand what the word means, it will foreshadow the events in which you are about to read. I like the idea that, and I also see it as more the stuff that I wrote, because it's going to be a 3-book trilogy. I see it more as possibly turned into a limited series, which is what I would really, really like. And yeah, well, wouldn't we all, right? Yeah. And I think it's important to have the things labeled in that way, especially for your first thing, if you're doing something that's like part of a trilogy. Just to kind of give it context, the second one, which I'm almost finished with now, the sequel to this, I don't do this at all. I don't do any of that. It's the chapters are not named, numbered, or dated or anything like. There'll be some dialogue that'll briefly explain that the events are taking place in around 2020, but that's easy because it's going to be during the pandemic. So it'll be easily people like, oh, okay. So if there are people wearing masks and getting vaccines and yada yada yada, it's the pandemic. So yeah, I definitely do that, and I like I'll just tell you. Well, are you going to get to a point where you want to ask us like what our titles mean, or do you want me to just tell you now?
No. I'm going to focus on quite specific things. You don't need to give too much away about the book, because I think it's probably better that people find that out for themselves. I want to focus in the time we have left, which is not a lot of time. I want to focus more on technical things and also marketing. I want to talk about a little bit. So,
okay, cool.
On the next thing that happened with me, on my budding author's journey, which sort of started, I think it was around 2015, I want to say. I was like, okay, I've got to have a cover, obviously. And I was really kind of like, I kind of had it in my head. I could picture it. And I wanted an actual actress on the cover of my book, because I knew I wanted it to be a TV show. And there's a whole story. It's in 1988, in fact. It's in Silver Screen Journeys, about how the actress that I wanted was the one from Castaway who meets Tom Hanks at the end of the film. And I actually based a character on her in the book. We couldn't get her because sadly she was fighting for her life at the time. So I ended up using an actress called Angela Dixon, who's a lovely friend of mine, very talented woman. And as a result of that, I ended up doing the cover for Diamonds in the Sky, the first one. And I basically said, I actually got because I wasn't too proficient with things like Photoshop and all that sort of stuff. So I thought I've got to use a professional artist here. So I did. And basically, he did the artwork, and then I did the photographic elements. And as a result of that, we got our final cover. The second book is basically a similar kind of cover, because again, this is a series. I'll just pull it up. And this is the second book cover. And it's funny because I've got a character in the book based on the actor Rhys Darby, and my friend Matt, who is an actor, has a bit of a vague resemblance to him, but didn't have ginger hair. So we gingerfied him in Photoshop and put him in, and he's kind of there doing his Rhys Darby bit. These kids that are all on the cover, I actually knew I wanted this cover when I last went to Africa. So I went back to this school with these orphans and arranged, and they were paid. How much of the money the children saw, I am a little bit concerned about, but they were paid. And got this group of about 6 kids to take various pictures, with the baby and stuff like that. And because the main story, one of the narratives is about this group of kids that end up inside one of these spaceships. But one thing that happened as it was kind of like what you'd call a happy accident, was when we did the first book, because this is what the ships look like in my story. And it just so happened that the point of the top of the saucer, or the spinning tops as I call them, because that's what they look like, sort of slotted into the A in my Lance S.A. Nielsen name, right? So I thought, you know what? And I said to the guy, can you make that really like go into it? So on the first book, that's exactly what we have. And then on the second book, I thought, you know what? I'm gonna keep that as a theme. Going forwards. Actually, I've got the first one here, which I'll hold up quickly. So this is the first one. That's Angela Dixon holding a kid, playing a Diane Morrow. And there you go. Sort of slim. So one of the things that the various authors that I knew said to me is, there are 2 things you can't get wrong. You can get stuff inside the book wrong, like typos and stuff like that. There's 2 things you can't get wrong. One is the cover, and the second thing is what's called the book blurb, or the jacket blurb. Some people call it other things, but this is the short paragraph on the back of your book,
right?
That is going to be the first thing that anybody reads who picks it up. And but before they even look at the book blurb, they're going to look at the cover. And you would, if you think back to when you first went into a bookstore and started looking for novels to read, whether you were going to the horror section, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever. I mean, for me, with a fantasy book, for example, when I was 17, I'd do 2 things. First of all, one, oh yeah, cool cover. That looks like a cool fantasy book. Second thing, look inside the book to see if it's got a map, of the world. Because if it didn't have a map of this new world I wasn't interested. So you wouldn't believe the number of fantasy books I didn't buy because they didn't have a map. So maps are not important, but maybe in the fantasy genre they are. But
they are.
Yeah, in the fantasy, because people like them, people love them. So I'd always advise a fantasy author to put them in. But the blurb on the back of the book and the cover, very, very important. So that was the process that I went through. I knew it was going to be something I wanted to be a TV series. It always was from day one. So I wanted these very filmic, kind of dramatic covers. There was always going to be one of the spaceships on the front. And the idea was with each book, there would be actors standing in for different characters in each novel. So, because mine is a multiple perspective, like a Game of Thrones book, right? Each chapter, different character. So, so Douglas, let's talk about cover first. What for you did somebody brief you? Did you give yourself a brief? What was the priorities for your cover for this?
So for Faraway Bird, we hired an artist to do an illustration, and
Right.
I'm very happy with that composition. In fact, there's a guy out there. He runs a website, Byzantine1200.org. And this guy, I remember I started following him back in like 2003. He reconstructed the entire city of Constantinople, modern day Istanbul, digitally. And I've just followed him all these years. And I asked him, I was like, can I borrow, or can you let me use and give me permission to use your cityscape? So he positioned his camera over his digital city, and he took that snapshot. And then the artist turned it to nighttime, added a bunch of little torch lights on, put in the moon, put in, a woman's back, and, she's taking her clothes off, and then you've got the birds wrapping her. So the artist came up with the composition, and then, but this became a little bit of a problem in the book production side, because the person who does the book cover needed to move things around. And according to her, the book title is not actually put in, there's too much open space on each side of the word bird. So I ended up running into a little bit of trouble. I like the book cover. I think it works, but there was some issues having it done separately like that. For the second book,
Right.
The Heroine's Labyrinth, I kept it all in house. And, Wes, I'm sure you did this. Lance, I'm sure you did. You look at comps, you look at comparable titles, see what their covers look like. And you do this for a reason. You want your cover to look like other titles in your genre
That are selling.
100%.
Yeah,
And you're not doing
yeah.
it because you're ripping them off. You're doing it because you're sending a signal to potential buyers that you're looking for a fantasy book. Mine looks like a fantasy book. So you're attracting potential buyers by looking a certain way. And every genre has a certain look. So a lot of historical fiction books shows a woman either directly facing you, or her back is to you, or it's zoomed in and you just see like her torso without her face, which I guess they say let you imagine what she looks like when you don't show. So that, so anyway, we use some of those ideas putting this together.
Rachel's done a huge hand-drawn map of her fantasy world. Well, I've got the first.
I love maps too, man.
I've got the first one that I did as a kid in a folder behind me, but I won't chew into my guest time to get that out. We'll show that another time. So in a sense, you with this cover, you went through two pretty similar things to me, which is that you had a foreground element, which was your character, and you had a background element, which is the main environment of your world, and my foreground element, woman, cradling child, protecting child. So we know it's going to be a heroine. So yours suggests more nefarious occupations and so on. There's a bit of underwear showing. So the very different cover available in Mormon territory and the West. It's not quite as revealing. So, but and you've got the world behind it. Plus, I suppose in a way you've got a third element, which is this dove. Is it a dove flying through the air?
It's a bird. It's a golden bird. That if you read the book, you'll understand.
A phoenix almost could be.
Yes.
Yeah. So, there we are. Yeah. And I also went to an artist, and he lived in Mexico, and had all kinds of interesting stories, and we used to chat, and he's very well known. But now I wouldn't use an artist. I just do it like you say, do it all in house. I think this is also a big leap in technology from when we both, all three of us started writing books to now. You think about where things were in 2015, 2017. You couldn't load up pictures on Amazon then on files. You can now. And also Amazon and the company they bought out, which now basically does all the in-house publishing for Amazon, they were two separate entities before. KDP, it was called KDP.
Yeah,
Amazon bought out. Yeah, but Amazon owned KDP. Amazon bought them. So it's all under Amazon, which is why now it's so smooth, it's so seamless. So so Wes, with your book cover,
Yes.
what was the thinking here?
Well, I went to a lot of trouble. There's a lot of talented people in the joint who can do art, and went to a lot of trouble to find the right person. Wound up paying him $10, which is the equivalent of 2 honey buns, because you don't have cash in the joint, you only have commissary. So I gave him 2 honey buns and 4 ramen noodle soups in order to make this really elaborate cover, looking like Kansas City and what I envisioned my detective to look like, and kind of a cool background with lots of guns and girls with big boobs and stuff like that. Well, one of the officers confiscated it because it had, pictures of weapons on it, and I didn't see it again.
I thought you were going to say they confiscated it because of the boobs, but okay.
No, because of the weapons. I'm sure someone was, spanking one off to it later on down the road or something like that. But anyway, so part and parcel with that thing I told you about, the cold feet and not wanting to, I basically just pulled the program up and looked for random stuff that would mesh with the title, and just pulled that up. I am planning on changing it at some point in the near future. I have a friend of ours that does stream with us, and he's quite the artist. I gave him some stuff, and he is working on that for me presently. I just wanted to get it out there in the ether. So I'm not completely satisfied with it. I agree with both of you guys' assessment. I think the back like little bibliography or the sleeve is important. I also think that
book blurb.
Yeah, I think that's important. I also think the cover is very important. I've bought many a book based on the cover, not just the author. So I would like to get it changed, and at some point it will be, and then moving forward, I'll make sure I always have an artist on hand. But yeah, I did shop around. I even put out feelers to people who I know are still in the joint, will be for a while, to say, like, hey man, I'll throw some money on your books if you come up with a cool cover for me. But it's just never
some honey buns.
Yeah. It never came out, and I wanted to get it out there. So yeah, I wish I could tell you I had some beautiful design with and had this thing, but I just basically hoping the book will sell on its own merits until I can get the cover upgraded.
I mean, one of the things is that procrastination stops us from doing a lot of things, and the ideal circumstances are, your book is written by expert proofreaders, you have an expert editor, all the things that someone at a publisher would expect, because you're going up against those people with your products.
Sure.
So you've got to be as good as those people, right? But as explained very well and concisely in the film Zero Dark 30, there isn't a team in another room working on your behalf, doing all these menial tasks while you're doing the fun, creative stuff. Often the team is you, maybe a mate who might be able to help out with something if you're lucky to have the Enzo's to Penzalicious 9000 app on your computer. Very helpful. But most people, it's literally just what you have at the time. And if you do start procrastinating, what you'll do is you'll talk yourself out of publishing. So, there are pros and cons. If you publish before you're ready and your book hasn't been properly proofread and it's got typos, and even my latest one, which had been proofread, I still found another 25 typos, which I've just corrected. So there's probably 3 different editions of my book out now. But, correcting those is important, because if your book is riddled with typos and you can't proof your own work, because it's like trying to see the trees in the wood, you don't know what you're looking for, then a reader can quickly turn off if there's too many. So I think the lesson here is, don't talk yourself out of going ahead, but make sure you ask for every favor you can knowing you haven't got any more coming before you push the green light, because you always want your final piece, even if it is going to be corrected later. The problem is the first person that picks up the book doesn't care about that. They care about what's in front of them now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's got to be as polished as you can get it. So that's my advice to people listening. I mean, and that's advice that I should heed myself. But I got locked into a Christmas release date for Silver Screen Journeys. I had to have physical copies.
I remember that,
to send to people before Christmas, because I was sending them to Los Angeles, which, so my publication date was December 1st. That got pushed to December 15th by the time I'd got the second round of proofreading done. And that's when I got the books, and it still wasn't ready. So, even in ideal circumstances where you have got lots of mates helping you out, sometimes it don't always go to plan.
That's right.
So let's talk about, because we're going to wrap up fairly soon. So the last topic I want to touch upon is, because I'm Doug, you don't have a publisher either. It's you. I mean, even though you got an offer from one, you're on your own, right?
Right. I've got a couple. I had a couple offers for both books, actually, but I really began once I got it in my head, the idea of the self, because once I got the idea in my head about self-publishing, I really couldn't let go of it. You have total control over it. You're going to spend a few bucks, obviously, as you know, but
yeah.
I like it that way. I'm happier that way, but I will say, I think to your point, it's a lot on you. You are pulling that sled. You're doing all the work, and even when you have people helping you, you're the driving force behind it all. No one's going to sell that book but you. So you got to get out in front of it, and if you stop talking about the book, or if you don't put a banner up somewhere, no one knows about it. No one buys it, and it's very difficult to get that book out there. So, but that's the way. That's the path.
It's a bit similar to the process of making a movie. It's like the making of the movie, the raising the funds, horrible part of the process. Making the movie, in theory, the creative part should be fun and enjoyable, or it can be completely stressful, but it's probably going to be a combination of both. Then you have to sell it / distribute it, and you run into all sorts of difficulties there. And and that's sometimes that can be the hardest bit, because there's no point making a film if no one watches it. Then all your work and money has gone to waste.
Well,
so
and then it goes on forever.
Yeah.
You don't ever stop. You're supposed to continue to sell the book somehow. So it is what it is.
So when you published your second book, we've got it here, The Heroine's Labyrinth, which is more you talking about heroic female characters in fiction, and you're talking about those archetypes, and I haven't read it, but I imagine you're giving all kinds of examples. No doubt there are 2 chapters donated to Jennifer Lawrence, who, of course, as we know, invented the female archetype.
The book is an homage to her inventing heroic women. So
yeah, indeed.
As well it should be.
But I imagine you mention, you're probably talking about Ripley from Alien and Aliens.
Yep.
And I mean, do you go into TV shows as well? Do you talk about things like? Do you remember the TV show Policewoman?
I have not seen that.
That was one of the first female-led sort of detective shows, and she had bright blonde hair. I think it was called Policewoman.
I like her already.
It was.
Yeah. And that was there you go.
The actress from Big Bad Mama, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. There you go for your second edition, Doug. That's another bit you can put in. So
awesome.
This has got what's different about this, I mean, this is a bit like it's closer to my book in from a marketing perspective, because my book is, okay, this is a journey in my life, but through films I've seen. So if you want to connect with memories of films you've seen and also hear about the cinemas that existed in London that were amazing in their day, buy my book, kind of thing. And, you know, you'll read about some of your favorite films. This is not entirely dissimilar in the sense that you can label it a bit more easily than I've got a novel among thousands of novels. This book is very specific. It's about, you know, female heroines in fictional narratives and why they're great. And here's some examples and blah, blah, blah. And we're going to talk through all of those different things. So with that in mind, what marketing were you doing for this book that was different from the first one?
So very different. With Faraway Bird, and by the way, this hopefully this helps. BookBub was one of the best sites to sell your book. I get results. With Faraway Bird, I did lose money on, like, I might spend $100 and I might make 50 back. With Heroine's Labyrinth, I would spend 100 and I would make 100. So I was able to market this book better for whatever reason. But the problem was Faraway Bird has a larger audience. You know, this is really a book, Heroine's Labyrinth is a book for writers. It presents and proposes a story structure that is an alternative to the hero's journey. I'm a big fan of the hero's journey, but this is an alternative. And so you're really targeting writers. So the marketing is completely different. Whereas I would say, hey, historical fiction people, do you want a book about history? Do you want to read about the Byzantine Empire? Here's one book out of 1 million, right? Maybe they buy it. Hopefully they buy it. With this, it's much more face-to-face, kind of like what we're doing now. Like I get on, I'll talk to other writers. I did a class in San Diego, California on the Heroine's Labyrinth. And I'm looking at a few others. I'm actually going to my kids' high school in 2 weeks, my oldest, to talk to 7th graders about story structure. So, I'm getting ready to start a YouTube channel to talk about it. So this is much more like, hey, let's talk shop. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts of writing. This, I think, will be very useful to writers. It's why I wrote it. And then like this, it's fun to just talk to other writers. I actually enjoy the company of writers. I enjoy creative people, and I love movie buffs. So, whereas it's fun to talk about the book and sell the book, it has also had this amazing aspect of just opening doors to talk about storytelling in general. So very different from marketing a historical fiction novel.
What would you say are the 3 main places or platforms that you're going to in terms of either connecting with people, be it Facebook groups or whatever, to advertise this? What are the 3 things, if you drew up a list, what are the 3 at the top? So
BookBub was excellent, but for this book,
explain to someone, and I know what BookBub is, but that doesn't mean everybody watching knows what it is. Explain to us, what is BookBub?
So BookBub is a site for readers who like deals. They want to get deals on books. And so they're looking for a deal. So you will knock your price down a little bit from the market, the retail price. You design an ad, and it tells you it's got to be 300 by 250. That's the dimensions. And I go on to Canva and I'll put a picture of my book on there, and I'll come up with a line like, alternative to the hero's journey. Right. And then you put a quote. Christopher Vogler's endorsed this book. Whatever you could do in a brief way, you put it up there. And here's what I love about BookBub. It goes, okay, so here's your book. Here's your banner. Who else on BookBub? What other authors do you want us to target? So I would say like Christopher Vogler, whoever bought his book might buy this one. This author. So you choose the authors who you think their readers would be interested in your book. So it's very specific. And then it shoots out emails to readers who are conditioned to look in there to see if there's a deal. And it pops right up, so it'll say this many people clicked on it. And then you could go to Amazon, click on, the KDP site, and it'll say, 9 people bought it. So I can look, I'm like, okay, I got 20 clicks and 9 sales.
How much are you paying to put an advert on BookBub?
So I would start with $20 to kind of fine tune my banner, right? You might not come up with the best banner right off the bat. You'll come up with better ideas as you go. So you're just kind of testing, which authors are you targeting that you're actually getting a lot of clicks. Sometimes I'll target an author and I'm like, oh, this one's going to be great. No one clicked on it. So I'm like, okay, knock her out of the list. I'm not going to target her readers anymore. So it's a fine-tuned process, but you will get sales. I've had the most success on BookBub. So anyone looking to sell their book, give BookBub a shot. The goal is to spend money and then make more on the book sales, obviously. And I will say that 1.5 to 2.5% click rate is probably going to get you a little bit of a profit. If you can get the 3%, you'll be profitable.
Right. So apart from the $20 that you spent on your banner, for the advert costs, is there additional costs on top of that to advertise with them for, say, a year or whatever?
Nope. No, you start what's called a campaign. And so what I would do is on weekends, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to spend $100 on that. So, and I didn't pay for the ad. I designed the banner myself.
Right. Okay.
I'd put the banner on there and I'd put like $100. I'd target the authors. And then I would say from, January 17th, Friday to January 19th, Sunday, run this ad until you spend the $100. And I would just run and it would tell click, 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 sales.
Basically, you're choosing how much money to put into your campaign.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Good. I'm glad we got clarification on that.
Yeah.
What are your other? So that's BookBub. What are the other top? What's the next number 2 and number 3 on your list?
So I did Facebook, but I don't recommend it anymore. YouTube. It's been wonderful to come onto YouTube and talk about the book. I have met so many like-minded storytelling people like Lance, someone who loves cinema, who's a professional, a veteran of the industry. And then there's a lot of people out there that
I hear he's a good guy. I know him pretty well. So
yeah, he's all right. He's okay.
You should definitely talk to him.
So YouTube has been good. You can get out there and talk. And for me, the important part is to talk about things other than the book too. Talk about things that you really love. Let people get to know you, and then make up their mind. Whether they're going to buy your book or not. And the new thing I'm really getting into, I'm not an expert yet by any stretch, is X. X actually looks like something that I can get into and sell some books. It has its own special targeting. So BookBub, YouTube, and X, I would say, are the big 3.
I spend about 5 minutes a day blocking whatever adult female thing is targeting me on X a day. It's like, Caroline 19 likes your comment, and I'm like, who's this? I click on it.
I thought Caroline 19 actually liked me. She sent me a DM.
Yeah, no, she lives with Tox at the moment, but
yeah.
Basically, these are just like probably Russian bots that are,
You wish they were Russian bots. You do wish.
Well, anyway, I just don't want that sort of. I don't want anything like that associated with me. So I'm endlessly blocking these things. But it's a good way of staying in touch with people like yourself. But yeah, I haven't pushed the advertising on it to perhaps the max that I could. Tox, before we wrap up, what about yourself? What have you been doing advertising wise?
The advertising, so there's a couple. My book takes place in Lawrence, Leavenworth, and Kansas City, Kansas. So I've been primarily joining groups on Facebook that target those communities, so to speak.
Good idea.
And I run another group of I run a veterans group, and all of the people I've served with over the 14 years have kind of gone off to the 4 winds, so to speak, in other countries and across America. So I entice them to, get a signed copy. So I bought, they have that option on Amazon where you can get author copies up to some ridiculous amount. I don't know what it is, but so I went ahead and spent some cash and bought some of the books, and I enticed them by saying, hey, if you buy this, I'll cover the shipping. And I just asked, kind of the same thing you do, Lance. If you would take a picture of yourself with the book, if you will, possibly give me a review, good, bad, or indifferent, and then kind of just shotgun approach, just boom them out there. Like, for instance, today I worked the KU game, did security there, and I brought a dozen books with me and sold 10. So,
Right.
cool.
you know,
Good.
I have a lot more success that way than I do just people randomly. And then, you know, and unfortunately, as Lance and I have discussed, if you are overseas, which a lot of my YouTube fans happen to be, and a lot of the YouTube people I stream with, including Lance, happen to be, it's pretty much, you know, you'd be cutting your own throat money wise to try to ship a book, to ship anything over there is like crazy
Cost
expensive. So
prohibitive.
unfortunately, I can't offer that. So those are usually the people that buy it from Amazon, you know, Amazon Europe or Amazon whatever that happens to be their you know, we have a friend that's in I believe he's in New Zealand, and he got his that way through Amazon. So you know, like that, I do plug my book quite a bit on almost any stream that I am on, especially ones that I'm in charge of.
You definitely
And
want to. You definitely want to be making one of these with your
that
book.
is dope, Lance. Who did that for you? Did you do that?
I use my Enzo 9000 app for that.
The
But,
Enzo 9000 is invaluable to any
Yeah,
writer
it's
that
a
needs.
really good app on my computer. Yeah, I mean, basically, these all cut. You know, I urge people to
That is lovely, Lance. I
send me
love that.
pictures, and I've actually got about another 10. In fact,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Doug's
Am
in
I
there.
in there? I'm not in this one, am I?
No, I think yours arrived after this was made.
Okay.
And what I'll do
I
is
see me in there.
you are there, yeah. What I'll do is I'll do an updated version of it. And some people don't like going on camera, so you will get a lot of pictures of, you know,
Yeah.
books on people's
Tabletop or with a
coffee
dog
tables
or
and things.
yeah.
But you know, that's fine. I mean, you can even turn that into a comical marketing thing. You know, who's got the nicest cup of coffee next to the book, kind of thing, or whatever it might be. I did a even bigger one of these for my first novel, Diamonds in the Sky. It was huge. I mean, the other thing that was really helpful with diamonds, because of course my occupation, I was able to reach out to people I'd worked with and get them to send me pictures. So, you know, that's Donald Logue, who's an actor that's pretty well known. Who's
Cool.
been in absolutely loads of stuff, and that's him on the set of Gotham, I think, in New York. And yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's been an absolute rock. And then the other thing I would do is I would get people to give me quotes, and then I would put those quotes on the picture. So, I mean, Jason Fleming gave me a great one, you know, the best start to a book series I've read since Game of Thrones. Possibly a bit over the top. This was the mosaic for Diamonds in the Sky. You see how many people are in that one? Yeah, I mean, there's nearly 100 people in there. So,
Wow.
you know, and yeah, I've got, you know, this guy sent me a picture of his horse reading it. It's brilliant.
Did the horse like it?
And the horse gave it a great review. I mean,
2 hoofs up.
the thing is also every picture that you get is a post on social media, because as soon as I get a picture, I thank the person I put the picture up, and I post about it. And you know, and when I went to the London Book Fair, and I'm sure there are American equivalents, I met literally hundreds of other authors. In fact, there's I've got pictures of them on the same thing, because one of the other things I would do, and Wes, you'll probably know about this from the virtue of being in Facebook groups, is that the last thing you want to do is join a Facebook group and as the new member just be talking about yourself. The first thing you want to say is, hey, I'm here, I'm a big fan of whatever, Leavenworth, you know, my specialty is blah blah, can I help anybody? In other words, ask what you can do for them first. So these were all other authors, and I made sure I got pictures of me with all of their books, or pictures of them with their books, so that when I got home, I could plug their books for them. Now, not all of them did the same thing in return, right? And they won't, because any creative thing is by natural osmosis can be quite telescoped. It's all about me kind of thing. But there will be people who will return that favor. So if you keep putting it out there, you get it back. Just a quick funny story. This is me with David Bellacci, who is one of the most top-selling authors of thrillers. I'm sure you probably all read one of his novels.
Oh yeah.
Sell very well at airports, right? I went to a talk of his, and I could see, he was there with his publisher, a huge big bodyguard and all the rest of it. As soon as he was done, I just steamed straight up and I went, I've got to get a picture with you. And he gave me one of the best pieces of advice about writing, which I immediately took on board with my second Diamonds in the Sky novel. If you can say in a paragraph what you said in 200 words, in 2 words, say it in 2. And that was that's quite a brutal piece of advice, but it's you've got to be able to hack your own work to pieces, because people like to read quite quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, with Silver Screen Journeys, it was a little bit different. I couldn't really apply that rule because I was telling a lot of personal anecdotes. So, there's only one way to tell them, really. The other thing I did with Diamonds was I made a trailer for the book, and you can see them. There's 2 of them. They're both online. And the actor in this shot, that is Will Johnson, who was in House of Dragon, who gets his head chopped off. This is it in the edit suite, So, and these were images that I got offline, which it's a mood board image. So, when the spaceships arrive in America, one of them's landing, all of these guys appear. They seal the whole area off. So there was a lot of stuff like that. But I think one of the things I have noticed with books that people are doing a lot of now is trailers. There's a lot of first-time novelists that they might know someone who's good with an edit suite. And don't forget, you've got AI now coming up as well. You're going to be able to within a year. You're going to be able, before the end of this year, I mean, some people are doing it already, you'll be able to create your own trailer for your book, just kind of using sort of animated concepts, a bit like the stuff that's proof of concept images that we use for feature films like Star Wars before they were made. This is what it's going to look like, sort of thing. You're going to be able to get those for your novel and have them move. And with voiceovers and everything. I've seen people do it already. I've seen packages that people have put together with AI to plug TV show concepts and movie concepts and stuff. And I know there are some people that are writing books with AI and just chucking them on Amazon in a hope to make money. See the Willy Wonka Experience in Glasgow for details. But
I read about that.
yeah, but I don't think. Yeah, that was the other thing he did. He just chucked a load of shitty AI written novels up online to try and make some money. I'm not worried about AI writing books because you can't beat a human touch. But all of the stuff around it, AI is going to be able to do for you, as well as anyone else. Be it the covers, concept art, trailers, music for those trailers, sound effects for those trailers. It's all going to be at the touch of a button within a year. Yep. So that's something to think about from a marketing point of view going forwards. Before we 100%. Wrap up, Tox, what would you say, having now written your first book, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned that you're going to apply to writing the second one?
I would probably say I will not worry so much about what it is that other people think. I mean, I'll get the opinion of people that I trust, but I spent so much time sitting on Slapdash. I mean, and I don't just mean that the concept of like, should I write it? Should I not write it? I literally had it done and just sat on it like a bird, you know, like nursing an egg, you know, and I was just like too scared to do anything with it. So yeah, I think that's the main lesson that I'm gonna go. And then, you know, everything that you have said here is completely true. You know, you've got to use, you know, I think that's something I admire about you a lot. You know, I know we joke a lot with each other, you know, kind of, as you Brits like to say, we kind of take the piss out of each other. But I will tell you this, that I have a lot of admiration for your trade craft, because your knowledge of I mean, it's great to have talent and it's great to write something and you know, it's great to be funny online, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, your knowledge of, you know, what to do, just all of the things that you've just said in this video in and of itself is, you know, I mean, it's a treasure chest of stuff for, you know, either already published writers or writers that are trying to get something out there. So I think, you know, I'll be taking a lot of the lessons that, you know, I've learned from you. You know, you and I have had private phone calls where you've you know, have asked advice and things like that. I think you really have to utilize your resources. I mean, yeah, we are self-publishing people, but at the same time, that doesn't preclude the fact that we could ask for help, you know, in our respective areas.
So don't worry. I'm preparing your invoice for great. And thank you for that, Tox. And Doug, same question. What would you say is your biggest learning curve from writing your first 2 books that you're applying going forwards?
I would just say that, you know, it's a lifestyle. You know, you're not, you know, one minute you're just writing some ideas, you're trying to write some cool stuff down. But to your point, Lance, like the idea that you have to market it and sell it and how much goes into that. And if you're just lobbing these ideas out into the world, no one knows about them.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go to the writers' conferences. You have to meet other writers. You have to get involved. And another thing you said, Lance, was, you know, it's easy to be like, hey, here's my book, buy it. You know, no, that's the worst thing. That no one cares about that. No one reacts to that. Like, you know, you go on to, like, for example, like a Facebook group. Someone mentioned that. You know, there's like author promotion Facebook group, and there's 100,000 members. Everyone does the same thing. They post a picture of their book and say, and none of them have any likes. You know,
yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
that's not the way.
That's the telescope mentality that I referred to earlier.
Right. So you have to get involved. You have to. It's not just about writing the book. It's about living as a writer. And in my experience, the number one learning curve is that you need to help other writers. Pass on, you know, give them good feedback. Read their stuff. Really internalize it. Give them something they can use. You know, join a writer circle. You know, writing in isolation isn't that great. It's good to get some feedback on your writing, and then to provide feedback for other writers who are putting stuff down, and you start to appreciate the creative process across the board. You know, Wes wrote a book, Lance wrote a book, and it's like, man, I know what you went through. So there's a little bit of camaraderie there, and you know, so it's a lifestyle. That's what I learned. You're not just gonna lob this book out in the world and then, you know, sit back and, you know, you sell millions of copies. You're invisible. You know, you got to go out there and be a writer. You have to be a part of a community and contribute. And then oddly, the sales follow.
Do you know what? That contributing to the community, that's really the purpose of this channel. You just phrased it in you're a writer. You phrased it with such beautiful words, Doug. Contributing to the creative community.
Doug, you should be a writer. Have you ever thought about being a writer?
I have not. That sounds interesting.
Contributing to the creative community is the mission of the Outcast Creative channel. We are here to contribute to people's creative journeys, teach people things in their respective creative professions with the more experienced guests that we bring on. That doesn't mean that they're not going to learn something as well. And that's the whole purpose of these chats. And I mean, the fact that I am a writing coach as well as an acting coach and stuff. I always like to chuck in my own little nuggets for you guys as well. So, like you said, Wes, hopefully everybody's learned something today. So we're going to wrap it up there. We've gone. I was going to keep this strictly at 90 minutes maximum. We've gone an hour and 40 already, and I wasn't sure if Doug, you were on with retro tonight at some point as well. So I didn't.
I might jump over there.
Yeah,
but yeah, this was my priority. I've been looking forward to talking with Lance.
I tried to schedule it so it didn't clash because she's normally on a bit later, but I don't know if is she on now. I couldn't find her, but anyway. But thank you so much for coming on. It was overdue for both of you, and you know what we'll do is in a year's time, I think we'll probably get you back on together this time next year.
Oh, that'd be cool.
To see that. Kind of, you know, what you. So I'm putting you on a mission now. Both of you have got to have a book out by this time next year.
Done.
So that you can come on. So that you can come on and promote it in January of 2026. My God, that sounds so ancient. Now, before we go, just to mention to the people watching, you may know that I'm a bit of a UFO buff. Not surprising with the diamonds in the sky thing. And if you haven't been following it, I have been following the UFO disclosure very closely, the Pentagon hearings, all of that, and the White House, all of that stuff, and Senate committee hearings, whatever. So I've been following all of that stuff, all the whistleblowers coming forward. If you're following that story, you'll know that 3 new whistleblowers came forward this week. All people with credible credentials that can be verified. And it has been said that actual crash retrieval footage is going to be shown today in a few hours.
Oh, wow.
If that turns out to be true, I will instantly be jumping on and doing a live stream about it on a Late Night with Lancey section. Because if it happens, apparently there's rumors that the Pope is about to make a statement about alien intelligent life, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of rumblings on the grapevine. So I think we're quite close to full disclosure coming out. You know, people actually putting their hand up and saying, yeah, we did retrieve craft and so on. Because that's the one thing I really want to see in my lifetime. You know, so I might be streaming again despite my croakiness if that happens, with special guest Alex Tabrizi, who's a documentary filmmaker who's actually doing a film about all of that. Let me quickly plug my guests' books again before I say goodbye. So we have Slapdash already out on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. The links for these books, by the way, are in the blurb below. We have Faraway Bird from Douglas and The Heroine's Labyrinth, which is more of a writing teaching book, which I think is well worth purchasing. And there's a Toxic's link for that. So if you haven't got any of them, please do support my guests by grabbing a copy, and check out the reviews as well for Doug's first book, because the reviews are really quite, any author would be happy to get those reviews. And yeah, and if you do get a book, especially if you get James's book, Slapdash, Wesley, sorry, got so many names, Toxic, it's very confusing. So
yeah, gotta hide from the law. You gotta keep them guessing. Get those names out there.
If you do get Slapdash, he hasn't got any reviews yet, so please do leave a review. And yeah, we're going to be back tomorrow, definitely, for the next 2 episodes of The Shield tomorrow night, where we will be getting into season 2, episodes 3 and 4 breakdown. Now, if you haven't seen The Shield before and you want to talk about something or look at something that's got exceptionally good writing, look no further than that show, because it's one of the best ever written, in my humble opinion.
Agreed.
So do check it out. And on that note, I'm going to play this.
I'm a different kind of cop. We knock down the doors other cops don't want to. fire from every scumbag in town.
They didn't earn it. I don't feel bad about taking it.
All about bringing force down on the street. Why don't y'all take a look at what you got going on under your own roof?
I never put the money above us.
How long you think that's gonna last?
I don't want Vic in our lives anymore.
You're investigating me?
Vic Mackey beats suspects and deals drugs. And that's just all in one day. I wonder what he's gonna do tomorrow. Everybody down!
Hey, my day's just getting started.
Films, TV shows, some